Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. I'm your host, Ben Stahl. We are on episode 38. Last time we were here, we were talking about HBO's Peacemaker, which was one heck of a wild ride. This week, we're going to be talking about some content that's a little bit more family friendly. But before we get into all that, I, of course, will introduce the panel. Returning for the first time since way early last year, since I kind of dropped off the radar with doing this, is Frank Roberts. Frank, welcome back.
Hello, good to be back.
And also coming back for the first time in forever is Andrea Gordon. Hello, Andrea.
Howdy.
All right, so before we get into the main topic, we're, of course, going to discuss a few news bits. This one dropped just yesterday morning. So 20th Century Films is already actively developing a third Agatha Christie film with Kenneth Branagh set to direct and star. This does not surprise me in the least. Death on the Nile, as far as I've heard, did fairly well, all things considered. So I haven't seen it. Have either of you seen it yet?
No.
I was supposed to be in the play Murder on the Nile, and so it's a little bit heartbreaking for me to want to go see it.
That makes absolute sense. I did see Orient Express, and I thought that his take on it was quite enjoyable. So I'm glad that he gets another take. Kenneth Branagh is quite an interesting fellow. So there's that. Got some Oscar news that's not too cool, I would say. So the Oscars have decided, in order to keep the runtime of the show this year a little bit shorter, it won't be shorter. It'll somehow end up stretching on and on no matter what they do. But the following 8 awards categories are going to be pre-recorded and then edited into the live broadcast. Documentary short, makeup and hairstyling, editing, original score, production design, animated short, live action short, and sound. And I think this is ridiculous. What's the point of watching an award show if you don't get to experience the joy of seeing these people win these things live? It just cheapens the whole experience for me. I get that they want to cut stuff and they want to cut the runtime, but the Oscars for us movie nerds is sort of like our Super Bowl, and it's not like they cut it's not like they cut field goals out of the Super Bowl to cut the runtime down. So,
Yeah.
If the Super Bowl ends up going into overtime, they kind of have to show it. So, I don't know. What do we all think about this?
I think it's ironic that editing is being edited in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you. I think it's just silly, as if to say that these categories matter less than the other categories. That's I always, whenever they edit in like the special effects categories, like the science categories that they throw in, I'm always like, I really want to watch those awards because I'm always so interested in like all the different technical elements too. I don't know. It just always made me be like, oh, I want to watch that instead. And so now I'm just like, oh, I'd rather go see just their live thing that they've recorded instead. I don't know. Doesn't seem great.
It was kind of like the Tony Awards last year, where you could only watch them if you had Paramount Plus, and I don't have Paramount Plus, so I got to see the tail end of the Tony Awards, which was also all pre-recorded. So basically, I saw like the best lead actor, best lead actress, and best musical, and that was all I got to see. I didn't get to see any of the performances either, and it's just kind of really like, I don't know why the entertainment industry is being treated like this, and the sports industry is not. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a shame that I didn't even know about that. That's even worse gatekeeping. And then, of course, the Golden Globes this year weren't broadcast or streamed at all. You could follow it along on Twitter, and that was really frustrating. I don't even really know what happened at the Golden Globes this year because I couldn't be bothered to just sit on my phone and scroll for the entire event. That's just dull. So, yeah, dear Academy, please fix your show. Please let everyone involved be on it. And I get it. It's a long run time, but you know what? We're also people who sit through, who tend to sit through Lord of the Rings all day at least once a year. So an award show is not gonna. It's not a big deal if you have to let it keep going long. All right. So some Disney Plus news, because they're always doing something. Disney Plus is getting a cheaper tier with ads launching late 2022. This makes sense. I know they want to get Disney Plus out to as many people as possible. It's not going to be the tier for me because, frankly, Disney Plus is already one of the cheaper subscription services. So I really don't, unless they cut it down to like $1 a month, like I really don't see the point for me of jumping down to this tier. If you don't have Disney Plus, is this something that would get you onto Disney Plus? Or if you do, would you consider jumping to this tier?
I have Disney Plus and I'm keeping mine. I don't know why I would change it. I don't like seeing commercials. I want to watch a whole movie. I'm going to watch the whole movie. I don't want to be interrupted halfway through in between with commercials. And I'm already paying for the regular Disney Plus, so I guess I'm going to keep it. I don't want commercials.
Yeah, I'd definitely say same. I mean, if I didn't have Disney Plus, this might make me a little bit more interested in it. And again, like you have to see exactly what the price point is on the service. But I hate ads. I see ads absolutely everywhere. I don't want to pay to see more ads.
I hear you there on the ads. I do have the base Hulu subscription with ads, and it's my only streaming service with ads. So I tend to avoid using it when it's possible. That being said, I watched a movie on Hulu last night and did not get any ad breaks.
Oh, that's nice.
Which I thought was interesting. I wonder if it's something they say for the shows because it's kind of what we're used to with broadcast television. But I'm not jumping down to a lower tier price on Disney Plus, unless again, if they say it's going to be like $1 a month, like something super cheap that I just couldn't say no to. Because I mean, I'm already $7.99 a month compared to what I'm paying for Netflix is nothing.
Yeah,
because Netflix just shot up again. So, yeah. But that Disney Plus value is going up for some people later this month. Last month, it was revealed that all of those Marvel shows that Netflix had were going away. And for a while, people were like, well, where are they going to go to? And then Disney Plus Canada was like, we're getting them. And Disney Plus US residents were like, what? And then Disney finally announced this last week that those Netflix shows are coming to Disney Plus, as well as parental controls, marking the first time that we're going to see sort of more mature, adult-oriented content on Disney Plus in the United States. They, of course, have it in other countries with that little Star brand tab that we don't get. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this works out because if you weren't really into the Netflix Marvel stuff before, I don't know if it's going to be if just moving it over to Disney Plus is going to be, the stuff for you because it's much more violent than what we're used to from the Marvel shows and the stuff they show on Disney Plus. So, and if this is a plan to start integrating those characters into the MCU, and to officially canonize those shows, it's a big ask to say to everyone, here is something like 10 seasons of content that we're dropping in that you now have to watch to understand stuff going forward. That's a big ask for your audience if they haven't already put in the time on Netflix. So, yeah. Are either of you interested, or have you watched any of the Netflix stuff on for Marvel?
I watched some of Daredevil when it first came out, but then I kind of dropped off the radar because I just couldn't stomach it when things get like way too hyper violent. And sometimes I understand and appreciate people putting hyper violence into superhero movies like a Deadpool, where it feels a little bit more like maybe realistic-ish. But I don't know. It's just eventually just turned my stomach, and I was like, all right, I can't watch this anymore. So I don't know. I'm not going to search it out, even if it does come to Disney Plus or anything like that.
I've never watched any of them, so.
Yeah, it'll just be curious to see if they throw it into the sort of official canonized timeline, or if it's going to end up with stuff like Runaways or the Fox X-Men films in that sort of alternate stuff tab they have. So yeah, we'll see. It's definitely hit and miss stuff, I'll tell you that. Daredevil I thought was incredible. Iron Fist was something. But that's enough for the news. So now we're going to talk about what we've been watching this week, outside, of course, of our main topic. I'll start. So when I realized that those shows were all leaving Netflix, I actually started rewatching Daredevil season 1. And then this week, I watched Jessica Jones season 1. And David Tennant is probably the best villain they've ever had. But it is a rough watch. But I'm also fortunate I actually have some of those first seasons on DVD. So, like the 2 they actually released before Netflix started getting stingy and not releasing any of their content on home video. Shame on them. It's also just weird to see Netflix content go away. That's never happened before. And when it comes to Disney Plus, it's not going to have the little Netflix logo on it, which is weird. So, yeah. So, Frank, what have you watched anything spectacular this week to recommend?
This week I've been preparing a lot for a chorus line at Tacoma Little Theater, so I haven't watched a ton this week. But just before I kicked into that, everything that I'm always watching is something that people have been recommending to me for years, and has been out for years, and is very old. But I finally watched the original Swedish Let the Right One In, which is amazing. Loved it so much. Such a great movie. And then the other show that I'm slowly plodding through is What We Do in the Shadows, which I absolutely love.
I need to watch both of those. I have seen the remake Let Me In, because it is, of course, a Hammer film. But
I didn't know that.
That was their big comeback film, was Let Me In.
Yeah,
so, but I need to watch the original.
Yeah, I'm interested in watching the remake. I heard not great things about it, but at the same time, the original was so good. I'm like, maybe it's just like a different taste sort of thing rather than better versus worse.
Yeah, I'll have to see the original too before I can make that judgment. But I do like the remake. Andrea, what have you been watching?
I have also seen the original Swedish one, but anyway, I haven't been watching anything new. I'm just kind of re-binging a bunch of shows that I've already binged, because I just kind of get home and then dink around a little bit and like having it as background noise. And right now that background noise is Futurama. So,
oh, nice.
And they're bringing it back as well. So finally with John DiMaggio, and I'm so excited. So I'm just basically just rewatching Futurama, and right before Futurama, I was rewatching all the episodes of The Simpsons on Disney Plus. So I guess I'm in a Matt Groening kind of mood. But every episode of Futurama gets funnier the more times I watch it. Like it's just, I'm really sad that it got pulled off the air again. But I don't know. I skipped the dog episode, but all the other episodes I'm able to watch. It just they're great. Zoidberg speaks to me a lot. Yeah, it's just, that whole show is one big meme, and it's just hilarious. And again, even watching it for like the third time in a row is still hilarious to me. So I really like it, and I can't wait to see the new episodes that they're going to come out with. So.
Well, you're in good company here. Yeah, we discussed Futurama on the news section the last couple of episodes because of the big controversy and then the big celebration last week. Yeah, I try to at least watch the first couple episodes right at midnight on New Year's, because perfect timing. That's just a fun show to rewatch, and as much as I miss it, I love how they ended it. But I'm very excited to see what they're going to do when they bring it back. I've said ever since a certain election in the year 2016, I've said that Futurama and Parks and Rec would be the perfect shows to bring back to comment on the wonderful world that we live in right now. So yeah. So let's talk about Laika Studios. So for those of you out there in the audience who have no idea what we're going into, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the studio began. So in 1998, Nike owner Phil Knight invested in struggling Will Vinton Studios. His son Travis was working there as an animator at the time. And in 2002, Phil would become the majority shareholder, Phil. And Will Vinton was dismissed from the studio after failing to amass funding for his productions. So he sued for the rights to his own name back. So once that happened, Phil and his son Travis founded the successor studio, which became Laika. Henry Selick, the director of Nightmare Before Christmas, joined the studio as a supervising director. Their first two projects were announced, Coraline and the CG animated Jack and Ben's Animated Adventure, the latter of which was eventually canceled, and the studio would shift entirely to stop motion projects. So that is the humble beginnings of Laika. It's kind of a special studio for us because it's not quite in our backyard, but it's a little bit south of our backyard, just down in Hillsboro, Oregon. So it's got a special place in the hearts of Pacific Northwesterners. And if you watch their movies, several of them, well, there's only 5 of them right now, but 2 of them for sure. Yeah, 2 for sure take place, at least in part, in the Pacific Northwest. But before we really dig into Laika, they are not the first stop motion studio. Stop motion has been around for a long, long time, and I am quite certain that we've all had experiences watching stop motion animation before Laika was a thing. So I just want to ask, first off, what is it that we find appealing about stop motion animation? Andrea, I'll go to you first on this one.
I think it's a way to be realistic without being realistic, because with animation, it looks like it's a cartoon, whereas with like live action, it looks like it's real people. But to sort of appease the kids versus the adults, putting them together. I talk with my hands, so I'm going to do that. There we go. And making the stop motion, I think it's a happy medium. And you can do a lot more stuff creatively with stop motion than you could with live action, and it still looks realistic. And also the fact, I don't think I thought this as a kid or had any idea, but now that I'm an adult, the time and effort put in to how creative these things can be is super impressive to me, and I'm just like flabbergasted how these people can do it. It's hard enough to make like a 5-minute stop motion short film, much less a 90-minute stop motion full length film. And it blows my mind how good these people are. And I'm like, I don't have that sort of energy to be able to do something like that. So seeing other people do things that I can't really inspires me, which is a weird thing to say, but I don't know. It's just the overall aesthetic and everything that goes into these sort of movies is why I like stop motion personally.
Frank, how about you?
I'm not entirely sure. I'd say it's definitely what Andrew said, in that you could really see the love that goes into the craft of making stop motion animation. I'd say that there's definitely like a tactile feel that you get in watching stop motion animation that other forms of animation have for themselves, but stop motion is like very specifically, it has its own sort of, I don't know, earthly feel. It feels real. It feels like you can reach out and touch it. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's the way that things kind of move and appear. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it just has, I don't know, something kind of like magical that other forms of animation don't have.
I think you both hit the nail on the head there, because when I look at animation, both hand drawn and CG animation have come a long, long way. But when you look at them, you can still say that's hand drawn, that's on a paper. They've done some great work to make it look 3D, but it's definitely 2D characters walking on a 2D plane. And as amazing as CG animation has gotten, when you look back at Toy Story versus Toy Story 4, how much better Toy Story 4 looks, again, it's still not living people. It's characters created on a computer. It has its look to it, you know. And unless you're a little kid seeing this kind of stuff for the first time, you know, we're all adults here, and we know, oh, we're drawn in. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's animated. There is something about stop motion where it's, you know, if we ever get 3D TVs that are just that absolutely blow your mind and really put you in there, stop motion is that kind of animation where it's like, I could reach out and I could touch this, and it's just it's so cool that way. And yeah, the amount of work that goes into it. I mean, just watch that episode of Parks and Rec where Ben tries to create the his stop motion film. You know, it's something I thought about doing as a kid with like my Godzilla figures. You know, even though they have like only 2 points of movement per limb, it's like it'd be so cool to like take those through a little Lego city. Like it's the kind of thing that you can do as a kid, you know. And I love the heck out of that. I'll start with how I was introduced to stop motion, and for me, it dates all the way back to King Kong. I think was the first film with stop motion animation. That of course is stop motion animation integrated into live action. And in 1933, that blew everybody's mind. It was absolutely the coolest thing you could go see at a movie theater, to watch, you know, this animatronic ape on screen with Fay Wray and picking her up and climbing the Empire State Building. It was just the most incredible thing. And then, of course, later on, the films of Ray Harryhausen in the 50s and the 60s, the skeleton fights in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts are, to this day, yeah, you can see a little bit of the blue screen work they do there, but just the amount of detail that goes into making those skeletons move exactly the way they're supposed to it's astounding to me. And of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was that Christmas thing you watch every single year, and it's just the perfect holiday, you know, animated special. So that is how I was introduced. Basically, surprise, surprise, it was Monsters. Andrea, what was your introduction to stop motion?
I'm pretty sure mine was Nightmare Before Christmas. It may have been Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but if it was, I don't remember. I think I saw Nightmare Before Christmas before I saw Rudolph, but I know for sure that Nightmare Before Christmas is what got me into the stop motion movies. It's a pretty cool film when you're, I don't even remember what year it came out, but I was a kid, so I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. My parents were like, yeah, that's called stop motion, and I'm like, why are they moving if it's stopped? So I was pretty dumb, but that's basically, I think that was my first one, was Nightmare Before Christmas, and then Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, of course, too. But yeah, I think it was Nightmare Before Christmas. I've said that like 4 times. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Frank, what was your introduction to stop motion?
Mine was Chicken Run. I'm pretty sure. I like looked back into my mind and was like, I'm pretty sure that's the first like time that I watched a piece of stop motion animation and realized actually what it was. And that's when I was like, oh, they're all just pieces of clay that people are moving little by little, just taking a picture of it one piece at a time. And yeah. And that after then, I sort of moved on to being fascinated with Wallace and Gromit. And it wasn't until much later that I watched like Nightmare Before Christmas or other stop motion animation pieces in film. So yeah, kids movies, you know.
I imagine that most everyone out there is going to say something like Nightmare on Elm Street. Good Lord, Nightmare Before Christmas. Who wants to? Let's make Nightmare on Elm Street stop motion. No. I'm sure there's some other monster folk out there like me though. But now let's get more into Laika. Frank, you and I were actually talking a little bit about your introduction to Laika before we started recording. So let's talk about that again. Huh?
Yeah, sure. The first Laika film that I ever saw was Paranorman, and I watched it when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and we just threw it on one day. And I was like, oh, what's this movie? And then I watched it, and I was like, oh, this movie is great. I loved it. It was so good. Yeah, and then I watched Kubo, and then I realized, I was telling Ben, I realized I was like, oh, I love Laika films. And I was like, oh, I'd only seen those two. And so I like ran out and like watched a bunch of others right before this. But yeah, I think what I really enjoy about Laika is, and what I enjoy about like coming of age stories in general, or like family films, and a lot of it ends up being animated films, at least in America. But the thing that I love about it is that it speaks to, I think, a central experience that all of us have in our lives of trying to find out who we are, where we belong, what our way in the world is. And I think Laika tells those stories very beautifully.
Andrea, what was your introduction to Laika, and why do you find these films appealing?
My first Laika film was Coraline. When it first came out, it wasn't something I was interested in. I thought it, like I don't know the years these things came out, so forgive me. But I was at that age where I was like, oh, that looks like a kid's film. I don't want to see that. It's for the kids. And then all my friends in college started recommending it to me. They're like, if you like scary movies, but that aren't like too gory or whatever, you should watch Coraline. And I was like, oh, okay. So I watched it, and I didn't sleep for days. The Other Mother, oh my God. I don't know why I thought it was a kid's film. Basically what Frank was saying about how it appeals to like every age, whether it's the story, the effects or whatever. And I what I find so appealing about the films is that all of their main characters, with the exception of one, are children, and even the one who is not is still kind of like a kid at heart. So it's interesting to see stories about children that are for adults, kind of. I mean, it didn't really make sense how I said it, but like watching a kid's film with a kid as a main character to me is a kid's movie, but watching a kid's film with a kid as a main character going through complicated adult situations is much more appealing. And Laika does a pretty good job with that. They're really good at just not holding back. They're not going to censor their films for audiences. I mean, just watch Coraline. But they're not like, they're like, this is what happens. This is a real thing that, happens. I mean, not real in the sense that it's literally a giant spider, but real in the fact that she has to deal with her own demons and stuff like that. And kids need to be introduced to that sort of thing. And it's just their way of showing that entertainment wise to adults and kids. And it's just, they care so much. Like they put so much care into their films, and it's really refreshing to see that.
Well, Andrea, like you, my introduction was also Coraline. I remember it was 2009 when it first came to theaters. I was in college, and one of my friends who lives down in like the Kelso Longview area, so he's got a little bit more connection to Oregon than I do up here. So he knew about this studio that had opened down there and had made this stop motion film, and he was super into Nightmare Before Christmas. And so he dragged me and a bunch of other friends to the theater. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll appease this person, whatever, and get in there and see Coraline. I was like, that was really, really good. Wow, I was shocked. And it actually ended up being my first Blu-ray um, about 2 years before I owned a Blu-ray player, because it came out with one of those Blu-ray DVD combos. So I was like, because I knew at the time I bought it, I want to be able to watch this like in the most clear, pristine way possible once I actually have a Blu-ray player, because it's so beautiful. And introduced the film to my family, and of course they fell in love with it, because why wouldn't they? So then, of course, all the other Laika movies came out, and the rest is history. So yeah, um, I, I love these movies for a lot of the reasons you just discussed. And I love whimsy in animation, which is something I don't think we get as much of in Disney and Pixar. Just this sort of different tone of comedy. There's particularly in one film we'll talk about, there's almost a very British sensibility about these films. And I, of course, appreciate that, being a fan of British comedy and that sort of stuff. So I just appreciate how different they are, but how they do still have that wide appeal to both kids and adults, because they are telling, for the most part, telling stories about kids, but yeah, who are dealing with real rough stuff with their parents. So yeah. Um, so let's talk about Coraline. Coraline to me feels like a template for a lot of their future films, and they were lucky to start with Coraline to get this story by Neil Gaiman. So they're already starting off with a really strong base here with the story. Um, but what I love about Coraline is how it draws inspiration from some other stop motion films. I think it's the most Burton-esque of Laika's films, and that definitely is no surprise, being it's directed by Henry Selick, who directed Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's that Burton type of weird horror that's not necessarily always terrifying, but is often unsettling. And even just elements of the film itself, like I think the pink apartments remind me a lot of the house in Beetlejuice. Just, this lonely house up on a hill. That is also, and I love when people do this in movies, a house that feels so much bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside. That's always so cool to me. But it also definitely carved the path forward for Laika, because it did introduce the themes of children trying to reach through to their parents and trying to find a way to do that. Yeah, Frank, you just watched Coraline for the first time. So what did you think?
I loved it. Yeah, I just watched it like 3 hours ago for this, and I was honestly I was blown away. I found it to be incredible. I really loved. I don't know. The thing that I really enjoy about it is how much of the movie spends time kind of focusing on giving Coraline what she thinks she wants, and how you get like a real sense of how much she's just a totally normal kid, and what sort of seems at first as like a really standoffish or rude attitude comes from the fact that she is desperately lonely and feels ignored by everybody. And it's only through recognizing that the people around her do love her, but have to make time for their own selves and their own lives, and don't have 100% of themselves to give to her, is what kind of carries the story forward. So Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really good, and it teaches sort of no, I don't know where I'm going with that sentence. Never mind.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that the one person who is willing to give her a ton of attention is YB, and it's the one person that she really doesn't want to be around.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I don't know what it says about it, but the fact that she just finds it so completely unattractive that she's just like, no, I want this on my terms. And so that's why she falls so perfectly into this trap of people constructing this entire world for her in order to ensnare her. Yeah.
Andrea, what's your take on Coraline?
But besides the fact that it's terrifying, I keep emphasizing that because it literally is my favorite Halloween movie. So I'm sorry, I have to go on a little tangent a little bit, but I don't like horror movies. Like I don't like slasher movies where there's a lot of blood. I don't like movies that rely on nothing but jump scares. Like I don't like a lot of Halloween movies that are out right now. I like movies that really can scare you without relying on jump scares, without relying on blood, without relying on serial killers or whatever. So psychological thrillers are great, like Hitchcock and stuff like that. Those are great for me. And Coraline especially is really good because I it's like you don't know why it's scary at first. Like Ben was saying, it's unsettling rather than scary, at least in the beginning, in my opinion. We're introduced to all the characters and they all have their little like quirks and things like that. And I would love the bottom apartment because in the other world they have a theater and that'd be great. But anyway, so that she just has like these weird quirky neighbors. She has Bobinski up above and the two actresses below, and her parents even are kind of quirky, and there's YB and the cat and the whole thing, and you don't know why they're so quirky, and then we see when she goes to the other world that these aspects are like exaggerated a lot when she's up there. So it's just kind of like, oh, that's why they're so quirky because that's their personality. And when she gets back to the normal world, we realize how actually caring and kind and sweet they are to her. And so because she's just focusing on those quirks, which is why they're like that in the other world. So it's just kind of like that sort of thing. And when she goes on that quest to find the ghost children's eyes and all that stuff, it gets when the other mother, of course, is very, very unsettling. Terry Hatcher does a great job with her voice too, because Terry Hatcher has that very sweet persona in her voice. When we're first introduced to her, she's like, "Hello, I'm your other mother. So nice to meet you." But she can like turn on a dime when she turns into that spider thing, and I think like her performance really helps with it. And Dakota Fanning's voice of where she does a really good job at sounding like scared. I mean, as an actor, I have to credit the actors. So, but just the fact that it's timeless. Also, like it doesn't really take place in a certain time period. You can watch it at any point, and it would still hold up. And it does a really, really good job at scaring not only kids but adults too, because we've felt that fear as well of being in a new place and not knowing anyone and leaving everything behind, and we feel like our parents don't notice us or care about us, or other people are just being weird for the sake of being weird. And the fact that Coraline reacts to that stuff in the other world, and suddenly she realizes, like you guys were saying, that what she wanted versus what she needed, and she realized that her actual world is the world that she wants. And it's really creepy in a good way, and it's actually a very heartfelt story about a girl and her relationship with her parents. So I feel like that's a really good. Sorry about the tangent.
It's all good. I actually, what you said about feeling alone, in particular, that the pink apartments are also just out in the middle of nowhere. They really don't have any neighbors. There apart from YB, there are no neighborhood children. So it really is that sense of isolation. I also love that you brought up Hitchcock, because one of my favorite shots that I definitely caught me the first time I saw it was the first time she goes through to the other side. She crawls through the tunnel, and I can't remember what kind of shot that's called, but I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's that shot from Vertigo and Jaws, the forward backward trick that they do. It's like, yeah, already you know something's wrong, because no one uses that shot when things are good. And then too, this hurts my brain every time I watch it, because if you go through a tunnel and you come out on the other side, even if you're in the same world, it feels like it should be mirrored, but she goes through one way and she literally comes out the same way. So it's like, it's not even a mirror version of the house. It's the same, but different. You know where I'm getting at there?
It's a little uncanny valley.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it should be mirrored, but it's not. It's like going through the infinite loop. Yeah, it's crazy. It's weird. And I do love that things very slowly get worse, and you very slowly start to see literally the cracks in the other mother's face, until it all just explodes in the end with that spider. And you're absolutely right, Andrea. She is horrifying. This is a great Halloween movie for people who aren't into the traditional Halloween stuff. Yeah. Oh, does anyone have anything else they want to add about Coraline?
Not really. No.
I know
the
Simpsons. The Simpsons did a parody episode of it for one of their Treehouse of Horror things. Because if at the beginning I talked about how I was watching The Simpsons again, and they actually had Neil Gaiman as the guest voice of the cat. So I just thought that was interesting that they did that.
I do have to talk about. I love Keith David. I love his voice. I love that I can say that this actor from The Thing is also in this adorable but horrifying animated film. And I love the final shot of the cat crossing behind the signpost and disappearing, so that we in the audience know that world still exists, and it's not necessarily a dream, but you know, you can trap you can't always get rid of your demons, but sometimes you can trap them. You can face them head on. You can trap them. You can say no, and then you can send your big black cat to check up on them every now and then. So Coraline came out in 2009, and it was about 3.5 years later, in the fall of 2012, that Paranorman was released, Laika's second film. So, if Coraline is that Halloween movie, that sort of alt Halloween movie, Paranorman is, of course, the Halloween movie. It is not subtle about it in any way, shape, or form. But like Coraline, it is absolutely approachable for all ages, while at the same time paying homage to so many films that came before it. I just watched it again recently for obvious reasons, and for the first time caught the reference to John Carpenter's Halloween in it, and can't believe I missed that. But it's when Mr. Prendergast is stalking Norman. Stalks him the same way that Michael Myers stalks in the very first film. And then, of course, the Jason reference with the hockey mask was wonderful. But Paranorman is also very different from Coraline in that it is not subtle about being a comedy. it is definitely. I think again, this one's even more approachable for a younger audience because it it's got kids humor written all over it. Um, just having a ghost pop up out of a toilet, you know, that's humor for all ages. But it's also a very heartfelt film that I think turns horror films on its head in the sense that you realize that the zombies aren't the villains and that the witch isn't inherently evil. That evil was done to her, and she simply responded in kind. And that it took someone with a big, big heart to tell her that what she's doing is wrong, but that what happened to her was also wrong. Um, it's just such a delightful film. Frank, this was your first,
Yes.
so tell us, what did you think of Paranorman?
I'll have to like think way, way, way back because I think it was about 2013 or 14 that I first and only saw it. But I remember specifically, and especially because I watched it while I was working with kids, the message that it brings, and basically what you're speaking to is that in a lot of, and Leica does this really well, in a lot of their stories, they'll take this basic framework for a tale of like, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, they're bad because who cares? And they'll flip it into a like, no, they're bad because something bad happened to them, and there's a way other than, you know, just like banishing them or something to actually reason with them and to get everybody to see the error of their ways and move on. Sometimes it doesn't really happen in real life, but I think it's important in like kids stories to see that there's a way to reason with people or to discover the truth or to dig a little deeper than people have before you, and to try to find a way to work past a lot of these terrible things that are going on.
It's also really telling that in the past few years, the angry mob of Paranorman, which is the real villain of the film, has reared its ugly head all over the world. And there's that. It's been, I know it's been a while, Frank, since you saw it, but just watching it last night, there's a line about you can't shoot into the you can't shoot at the crowd. That's for the cops to do. Something like that. And it's like, oh,
Hey,
God.
what are you doing firing at civilians? That's a job for the police, is what she says.
Oh, God.
It's like, oh, man. Yeah, it's in 2012, we laughed that off. And now in 2022, we can't anymore. Can't necessarily laugh that off. Andrea, what are your thoughts on Paranorman?
I think Paranorman is basically a comedy version of The Sixth Sense. I mean, not exactly, but like the way it's portrayed with The Sixth Sense versus Paranorman, they both have the same sixth sense, I guess. And it's just kind of, you feel really bad for Norman because you know that nobody can help him with anything. Like, his dad is a total jerk to him. But his mom tries to support him, but you know that she thinks he's crazy. And it's, again, sort of the parent-child relationship that Coraline had, where it's like they're not getting along with their parents and stuff like that. But sorry, my dog was doing something. It distracted me for just a second. But the fact, when I first saw Paranorman, I think I didn't see it in theaters, but I think I saw it on Netflix or something. The twist with the witch being a child literally shocked me. And because they were telling tales about the witch of I don't remember the name of the city. I think like Witch's Hollow or something like that. And they had all the statues of these creepy like witches like this. And then when he saw the vision and it was like a child, I was like, oh my God. Because that really happened during the 1600s, during the witch trials. These literal children were being murdered because of BS reasons everywhere. And it's just like, wow, they went there, and I'm glad they did, because like, again, it's sort of like, oh, why are they doing that to a kid? And it's just like, well, they did do that to kids, and it sucks. But the fact that Paranorman, or his name's not Paranorman, I'm sorry, that Norman was able to see the truth and deal with it on his own. And what I think it was Ben that was saying that it was bad that she was doing these things, but it was also bad that they were doing these things to her. And in the end, it's sort of one of those situations where nobody was really right. Like, nobody really wins. The zombies do end up saying, like, we regret everything we did, but it was too late because she cursed the town. And the fact that the witch, made her case, and that wasn't enough, and she still ended up being executed, it's just kind of like Norman was saying things like, this isn't you, this isn't how you act, this isn't what you should do. And she's like, well, they made me do this. And it's just kind of like, I mean, she's just doing what they expect her to do, and that's fine. And it's really, I think I may have cried the first time I watched it, I don't remember, but it's just kind of a beautiful sentiment, and it's in like a bittersweet sort of way, because nobody wins. I mean, the zombies end up repenting, of course, and all that stuff, but it's just his parents, end up talking to Norman and saying, wow, you really do have a really special gift. And I do like his friend's brother. He's like the first gay Laika character, which I like. Good for them. But I don't know. It's just, it's hard for me to explain a movie and how I feel about a movie like Paranorman, because it's so good, and it's so powerful, and it sends a powerful message that sometimes there is no bad guy or good guy. Sometimes people are just awful people, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And Norman does his best to help, and she said she doesn't want his help, and it's just, he's even trying to help her, and she doesn't want it. She shoos him away, and it's good to teach kids that sometimes there's nothing you can do to help somebody. And I think in that aspect, I think it's a really important message to teach people.
Yeah, these are great films for that. And I want to jump back a little bit into Coraline, because we talked about isolation in Coraline, and Norman definitely experiences that same kind of isolation, but I think in a much different way, because he does live in a community. He's surrounded by people, but the only people he can talk to are dead. Everyone else around him thinks he's either crazy or, except his little friend, who, and that scene with the dog is just delightful. But yeah, these are characters who are deeply isolated, but also, I just talked about Norman being in a community. It's interesting to see Laika as a studio evolve, going from this fairly not one note, but like this relatively one location sort of film with Coraline, into Paranorman, where we get to go all around the city. We get to go to the town hall, to the cemetery, and we get to see them doing so much more with so many more puppets on stage. I say stage because I'm a stage actor. On film, on the screen. It's already a huge leap for them forward in terms of what technically they are accomplishing, not to mention the fact that they do have to start adding in some CG effects to create that sort of ghostly aura for a lot of these characters. It's genuinely a huge leap forward, and I really appreciate that. And it's something we're going to see moving forward with all of these films. And I'd like at this point to move on to that very British film I mentioned earlier, which is The Box Trolls. Unfortunately, when we were talking earlier, Frank, I know you have not seen this one yet.
It's the only one I haven't seen, okay?
Which is a shame.
I've seen all the others.
Because Box Trolls is a lot of fun. And it also, to me, The Box Trolls is the apex of that sort of parent-child relationship film that has already been explored in Coraline and in Paranorman, because we have Winnie and her father in that film, and her father just won't listen to her because he's only interested in his white hat and his cheese. and his massive, massive upper class privileges. But the Box Trolls is it's so fun. It's got, again, this very British sensibility. For getting to actual British actors, it's got Simon Pegg, Jared Harris, and it. I know this is probably going to go over. This might go over both of your heads, but when I was watching again recently, I really wanted to afterwards sit down and replay the Fable games on Xbox, because to me the Box Trolls is the living embodiment of those games. This kooky world where you could go around kicking chickens and with little trolls that steal stuff, and with ridiculous like obsessions with mundane things like cheese, which actually, let's be real, cheese is not mundane, it's delicious. Andrea, what are your thoughts on the Box Trolls?
Box Trolls is my favorite Laika movie. Don't forget you were naming actors in it, but Sir Ben Kingsley's in it. He plays the villain. And the name of the town is Cheesebridge, which I think is fitting for the theme of cheese. I can't really explain why it's my favorite Laika movie. It's so delightful and terrifying at the same time. Oh my God. Snatcher, sorry, I couldn't remember his name, is the name of the bad guy. It's not a spoiler. You know he's evil at the beginning. He's just these terrifying tactics he has to get rid of these box trolls that are supposedly terrorizing the city, and it's just he will stop at literally nothing to get. He wants a white hat as well to join the cheese club that the upper class is in. So he basically they say if you can take care of all the box trolls, you can join the club. So he literally just becomes obsessed with getting rid of these innocent little creatures, and he'll there's just Ben Kingsley was a really good choice for it, because Ben Kingsley can turn on a dime character. I really like Ben Kingsley as an actor. So and he also plays Madame Frou Frou, which is hilarious. And the heartwarmingness of Winnie and Eggs is very nice. I like to see a boy-girl friendship that doesn't turn romantic, especially in children. These kids are only 10 and 11 years old, so I'm glad they didn't go that route. It doesn't really go that route with kids very often, and I like that. But it's nice. She's upper class, and he was raised by the box trolls, so seeing their cultural differences is pretty great. A lot of movies do that same sort of thing, like Tarzan and that sort of thing, where they're being introduced to the upper class life and they don't exactly fit in. And I think this movie does a really good job of that. It does a really good job with the humor. That when he's at the ball at Winnie's house, that scene's hilarious to me. And just the way the box trolls talk and move, I think is adorable, because they don't speak English, they speak box troll, so it's pretty much they're like minions, but not as annoying. And they're all named after what's ever on their box, which I think is really cute. So they find Eggs and they give him the box that says Eggs on it, so his name is Eggs. And it's just overall it's a really fun movie. It starts off as this cute little here's how the box trolls live, they're raising a child, and it turns into this almost I don't even know, extremist movie. It becomes sort of political extremist in a way, with Snatcher and how he acts, and how the town is blindly following him, saying, yeah, good job, we like this guy. So it's just unintentionally iconic with what's going on today. I'm trying to think of what else. Again, I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but I have to comment the voice acting there. It's Richard Ayoade is my favorite character in the whole thing. He's just very Richard Ayoade. And everybody in it is British, I think, except for Elle Fanning, who plays Winnie, the main girl. So it is very British. Ben's right about that. And I think it's interesting about This movie it uses a lot of British humor, like you were saying, Ben, when the other two movies used very relevant humor. And this movie takes place during the Victorian era, so it's a lot of humor from that time as well. So it's just kind of very subtly matching the tone of the film in a way. And I just love it so much, how evil the villain is and how good and sweet the heroes are. And it's very cliched in that way, but they do it in a way that's not so cliched. And I think that they pull the whole movie off really, really well. And I really like it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Victorian era. It has a real steampunk vibe to it, with the way the box trolls just assemble all of these kooky devices out of whatever they can rummage, and how they build this machine for Snatcher at the end that is, this behemoth furnace monster. And I love that Cheesebridge is the most ludicrous location in a Laika movie, because I think you only get to see it like from a wide angle at one point, but basically it's a hill, but it's just a cone. It's just like a cone, the whole city, and everything just goes downhill.
Like literally.
And like, and which is perfect for when the giant roll of brie ends up rolling from the very top of the hill down into the water. And I do love those the two henchmen characters who are doing one of my favorite things in movies, constantly questioning, are we the good guys or are we the evil henchmen? But they do it in that very British way of just saying it directly to your face, saying, we're evil. And then just twisting it around in the end. And yeah, you're not wrong about Ben Kingsley as Snatcher being the villain. And unlike Coraline, he is literally, his character was sculpted to look evil. They're not trying to pull the rug out from under you this time around. He is menacing as heck, from beginning to end. And I won't say what happens when he gets cheese, but it only gets much, much worse. But yeah, just ridiculously British, wonderful. Again, I do love steampunk stuff. It's sort of a genre that I don't think gets explored enough in films and television. So I'm all for that. But yeah, these films go on such an interesting trajectory from a fairly straightforward story with Coraline in terms of like its tone and its sort of use of humor, to the clearly goofy Paranorman, to now the very sort of understated humor of the box trolls. But they pivoted big time with their next film. That's Kubo and the Two Strings, which came out in 2016. Frank, you did not get to talk about the box trolls because, Frank, you need to see it. But what
would have been really weird if I had talked about the box trolls with any
when you hadn't seen it,
at all. Yeah.
I know it's really difficult to talk about it and not spoil too much for you.
No, you can spoil it. Honestly, I don't mind. But
well, we didn't really. You'll know what happens anyway. It's not. Yeah, it's a kids movie still. So
fair enough.
It's it's not like we're about to spoil No Way Home for you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Peter Parker, also, Spider-Man.
Oh no! Why do I even watch it now? What did you do?
Anyway, so Frank, tell us about Kubo.
Kubo and the Two Strings was the second Laika film that I ever saw, and the thing that I like about Kubo is the thing that I think I like about a lot of Laika productions in general, is that they really have their own. It has its own kind of like flavor and style to it. It's kind of veers away. It's almost like a mash between like a lot of Laika movies, with like this really focusing on this parent-child relationship, except it turns it on its head to where the parent-child relationship is actually I mean, not to spoil the movie, but I guess to spoil the movie in order to really talk about it is actually very positive, and that the parents are there for Kubo in a way the entire time, all along. But it's also much like their next movie, very much like more of like this family action adventure comedy that you sort of see in more, I guess, mainstream animation or from studios like Disney or Pixar or things like that. And it's kind of like this blending of styles, I think. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen Kubo, but I remember really, really liking it and liking what it had to say about the bonds of family, even if they're not physically present, and what that means.
I really like what you said about turning the theme on its head, because you're right. This is a positive family relationship, even when these parents are bickering.
Mm.
They're very caring people. Um, I got to see Kubo in the theater and was blown away by the animation in this film. Um, I love what they do with the origami in this, and it's something that I don't think would be as effective if this was hand drawn or CG. Just to see those, those actual pieces of paper flying about and folding themselves is, um, to me, I think it's the best bit of animation that they've done. And I also, I do, I love the quirkiness of the three previous films, but I love that this film does feel more mainstream and has a much more broad appeal in the story that it's trying to tell. It is a much more traditional adventure film that, you know, takes its inspiration from the sort of grand epic fantasy. Um, but it all, and I love the creatures in it. I love the eyeball monster at the bottom of the ocean. I love Kubo's ability to create the ship out of leaves. And I just love at the end of the film when you finally realize what the two strings are, when he takes the strand of his mother's hair and the string from his father's bow, and ties them up to his instrument. And the two strings were his parents all along. And it's just a beautiful connection with family. And I kind of going back to Paranorman, Kubo, the end game isn't to kill his grandfather, the Moon King. Instead, he shows him what mortality is. He brings him into his own world. And it's a beautiful moment to show grandfather, this is what life is down here in the mortal world. Yeah, I absolutely love the storytelling in Kubo.
I have only seen Kubo once, and it was a very long time ago. So I unfortunately don't remember much from it, except that the animation is arguably the best Leica has done. Um, the Moon King, when he does that little thing with him, like at the end, I was like, that's stop motion. That's incredible. Like, I mean, maybe I'm sure they used CGI to help a little bit, but you could tell that it was all like stop motion stuff like that. And I just remember, when he plucks his strings and it goes across, and it was probably the most beautifully animated movie that I'd seen in a very long time. And I remember certain parts of it that I also don't want to spoil, but when a character is lost, and I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't expect that at all to happen, and the fact that they stayed lost and didn't come back, I was very like, wow, they actually went there with that, and I'm glad they did, because again, it's a thing that they need to teach kids, that sometimes people don't come back. Like, it's just, it happens, and it's not fun. But I just remember being so shocked, like, wow, Disney would never, like, it was on screen and everything. Like, it literally just happened right in front of you, and it was just kind of like, wow. And I'm really glad that happened. I mean, not in the story wise, but like, that sort of thing, and the fact that that drove Kubo more Like it inspired him more, and it's just yeah, his parents being with him the whole time, like what you guys were saying with literally the two strings and are his parents, and it's just it was a beautiful movie, and I'm very sorry that I don't remember a lot of the movie because I think I saw it when it first came out and then not again because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. But what I do remember were those things, and I think which it's good that I remember those because I feel like those things were the most impactful, at least for me. So I do have one negative about it, and it was a movie that takes place in Japan, didn't have any Japanese actors in it. But
yeah, that's definitely an issue that comes up, and I think I sometimes, I think about that when I also watch shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm like, yeah, we can do
it
better.
didn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. Like it didn't take away from but I'm not an Asian person, so I can't speak for them. But for me personally, I still enjoyed it. It's just, at least come on, guys, you're in Japan.
Yes, it does. George Takei is in it, but only as a small supporting character.
Right.
And we do get an oh my out of him in that movie.
None of the leads were.
But no.
Yeah.
I do want to actually talk about, though, even though representation is not this film's strong suit, it's interesting how at this point they were really shooting for the stars with their voice talent, because this was Charlize Theron a year after Mad Max and Matthew McConaughey shortly after Interstellar and Dallas Buyers Club. So, arguably at peaks in their career, they were really, and Ralph Fiennes and Rooney Mara. So this is probably their most star-studded ensemble. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how, and not to say anything bad about them, the talent in the other films, but we're about to get to the last film, and it stars arguably the biggest name, out of anyone we're about to talk about. So let's talk about Missing Link, which I saw for the first time last night. Oh. I missed this one it's the only one I've missed in theaters, and took me, almost 2 years to finally watch it. But it has Hugh Jackman, definitely the biggest name of anyone in any of these films. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed Missing Link, but I would also say, pun intended, for me, this is the weakest link of Laika's films. Very enjoyable. And it's directed and written and directed by Chris Butler, who did Paranorman. And I could tell right away, because it has a lot of the same type of humor as Paranorman. But it just feels so different, because for the first time, we're not telling the story from the point of view of a child. Our main character is, a probably a 40-something man. And yes, Mr. Link is childlike. That is certainly true, but it was such a different story, and I enjoyed it, but it felt so different from the other films that it didn't quite grab me the way the other ones do. I don't know. Frank, what do you think about Missing Link?
Oh, no, I 100% agree with you there. I think what, for me, makes it sort of like, it almost enters into this narrative uncanny valley. We hear that term applied a lot to like CG and stuff. But for me, it's like, it's so close to the standard action adventure comedy that you see, but it also still has like some of that like a humor, that it just kind of feels like almost, I don't know, like it's trying to be something that it just can't quite copy all that well. And I don't know, but that's for me why I think maybe it didn't hit so well for me. It's just I appreciate, again, like all of the films, what it has to say about finding your place and where you belong and all of that stuff. But again, that's present in a lot of other family action movies, and you kind of see it in sort of like, it's, don't you see it's here in the people that you've been adventuring with all along. It's like, okay, yeah, gotcha. I've just felt like I've kind of seen it before. That didn't stop it from being technically gorgeous and absolutely impressive, all of the acting being great. But again, it's sort of like, I've seen all of that in films that I've also enjoyed a little bit more as well. And so I don't know what's missing narratively for me, but yeah, this one was just a little bit more of a little bit of a miss.
And you know what? They've only made 5 films. You
Yeah,
know,
truly. That's
they've only made 5 films. It's bound to happen eventually. Every studio, every major series, you go on a winning streak, and again, not to say Missing Link is bad. It just didn't get the same way. Andrea, what
Mhm.
did you think?
I agree. This is, in my opinion, I think it's Laika's worst film, but it was still very enjoyable. And for a company that doesn't really have any bad films, that's pretty good. 5 out of 5 films have been good films, including this one. I thought it was a good film. It just wasn't their best, is basically what I was saying. I feel like this one felt like it could have been a live action movie. There wasn't really much to it animation wise. I mean, it was spectacular as well. Like Frank was saying, it was visually very stunning. The fact that it was animation was great. But I think if they would have made it live action, it still would have been the same, like plot wise, like nothing about it needed to be animated. And I get that Laika's style obviously is the stop motion, and I'm not complaining at all about the stop motion in Missing Link. It was still fantastic. Like the detail on Link was incredible, and the voice acting, of course, and just the whole thing. I'm not mad at all that it was stop motion, because again, that's the whole visual about it. But the other movies were very fantastical and whimsical and stuff like that, which helped with the stop motion to tell a story. Whereas this one, it just felt like a live action movie that they animated. Um, so it was very action adventure. I do like that it took place here, which we said at the beginning. um, and I really like the humor in this one for some reason. I thought was kind of my favorite. I thought it was really funny. Zach Galifianakis has great delivery. I mean, he's a really funny guy. And as per like a tradition, the villains were very awful. Like they were awful people. Stephen Fry plays the main bad guy, I believe. Stephen Fry.
Yep,
For sure.
Yeah. And he's all around a very enjoyable person. Stephen Fry's great. And the way the beginning part reminds me a lot of Around the World in 80 Days, with the gentleman's club and the wager, and how they don't want him to join the club because he's a whack job, and he's like, well, I'm going to join your club and do this, and they're like, well, we don't care, we don't want you to join our club anyway. So I felt very Around the World in 80 Days from that. Honestly, kind of the whole movie reminded me of Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh yeah,
He was literally traveling around the world with this missing link, this Sasquatch that he found, and I love Around the World in 80 Days, so that wasn't a complaint of mine. But it's Zoe Saldana. She's great. I forgot what I was going to say. Actually, I lost my train of thought at Zoe Saldana. I liked. I mean, I saw the twist. It's not really a twist. Coming a mile away about the other links not accepting him as their own. Again, not really a twist, but and it's just the real, yeah, like what Frank was saying, the real treasure is the friendships we were making along the way, and which is, it's also a very nice message to send to kids. Enjoy the company you're with. If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And Emma Thompson being the Yeti, that she's the very sassy British touch that they needed. I mean, all the British were sassy in this, but Emma Thompson particularly. But I still do enjoy the movie as a whole. But I agree with you guys that it's not their best. And having the main character be an adult might help with that, because it's not really a coming of age story like the other ones were, because he's already a grown up. I mean, maybe for Link, but Link didn't really change throughout the movie. He kind of had that same whimsical ideal throughout the thing, except when he found out that the Yetis were rude. But that's about it. He still kind of remained whimsical. But yeah, I mean, again, I still enjoyed it, but again, I agree with you guys that it's not their best. So
Come to think about it, it has kind of have a Looney Tunes vibe to it. Um, it feels kind of to me, it feels kind of like the same way that Disney pivoted when they did The Emperor's New Groove, except where Disney hit gold, Missing Link just doesn't quite hit that high. Because I particularly think of Looney Tunes when I think of not the main villain, but the Timothy Oliphant character.
Yeah.
And that is totally like a Yosemite Sam type of character, his kooky gunslinger. And I will say that based on Laika's history, I don't know why I was shocked by this, but like I was shocked when all the villains fall into the abyss. I was like, whoa.
they love killing off their villains in a very gruesome way, don't they?
Yeah, even just the guy with the clipboard.
Yeah.
Just taking notes.
He was just doing his job, man.
But also because it has that Looney Tunes vibe, I was also waiting for them to hold up the yikes sign. Like, because they kind of do that sort of running as the ice is crumbling beneath them and their feet are sort of doing that slippy thing. And it's like, oh yeah, this is totally like a Wile E. Coyote bit. But yeah, it's a fun film. I would not mind adding it to my collection. It's on Hulu. If you don't, it's one of the only ones I think I can find that's streaming right now.
Paranorman's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Good. So yeah, and watched it on Hulu and didn't get any commercial interruptions, and I was shocked. So now that we've sort of talked about all the films individually, I kind of came up with this during the Book of Boba Fett and Peacemaker episodes. So I want to kind of look at all the Laika films by the numbers and sort of see what the general audience and reactions have been. So I'll just go down the list here really quick. So Coraline, and these are all domestic box office numbers. Coraline ended its box office around $75,286,229. A generous Rotten Tomatoes score of 90%, and IMDb score of 7.7. Paranorman had a box office run of 56 million, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 89, IMDb 7. The Box Trolls, 50 million, 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.8 on IMDb. Kubo, 48 million, 97 on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.8 on IMDb. And Missing Link, 16.6 million at the box office, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 6.7 on IMDb. Those numbers, I think, are so interesting because we obviously have been discussing how much we love Paranorman and the Box Trolls. And it's pretty obvious that audiences did not have the same response, particularly with the Box Trolls, which is just downright sad. And it's also, I think it's sad in general to see the box office numbers for film after film keep going down, especially that massive dip for Missing Link. Even though it did well enough, I'd say, with critics. But it seems obvious to me that for audiences and critics, it's Coraline and Kubo all the way. Frank, what do those numbers say to you?
No, I'd absolutely have to agree with you. I mean, just looking at if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes rating, and even the IMDb rating, Missing Link isn't that far behind a lot of their other films, but box office wise, I mean, if I were a finance person looking at it, I'd be like, okay, we got to figure this out because that is a huge misstep from their previous. I mean, everything else is around 50 million, and so with Coraline being well above that, and so you gotta I would certainly be looking more back towards some of the earlier works and sort of the tone or what people maybe expect from a studio like Laika. I mean, yeah.
I also wonder if Coraline has had the added benefit of when they were advertising it, and this is plastered clearly on the box for the Blu-ray from the I think it's from the producer. No, from the director of Nightmare Before Christmas. Like that's going to give your movie a big bump right there to be associated with such a beloved classic, which actually, when I think about it, wasn't a big hit financially when it hit theaters. It wasn't until home video that Nightmare became a huge hit.
Mm. But by the time Coraline had been released, Nightmare had been out on video for quite a while, and so I'm sure people growing up with that were like, "Great, let's go see Coraline."
Yeah, and it's just a shame to see that these numbers keep on falling.
Mm.
Andrea, what does that say to you?
I've never been one to listen to critics or box office, because the only person who can judge a good movie is myself. Like I like a lot of movies that critics don't like, and I like a lot of movies that weren't great hits at the box office. So I mean, I personally don't listen to them, and a lot of times they're wrong, like especially about these movies. And I remember when Captain Marvel got bombed on Rotten Tomatoes by the neckbeard incels, and so it bombed as well, and it wasn't that bad of a movie. But that's another story. I'm sorry about that, but I feel like these movies are losing value. Like when you look at Coraline, it came out in 2009, and it was the first of its kind, because there had been stop motion movies before, but not like Coraline. Like Coraline was its own thing. And so it was the first, and it was like, it paved the way. And so all the ones coming after it, it's like, okay, cool. Another stop motion movie. Oh, another stop motion movie. Oh, another stop motion movie. Oh, another stop motion movie. And again, they're all super impressive. But it's just, since it paved the way, and all these movies are being released with other movies that were more successful. Like I think Missing Link came out the same week as like, I don't know what year it came out, like Suicide Squad or something like that. I don't know, which is unfortunate for. I mean, Suicide Squad was terrible, but anyway, but which is unfortunate when it's just kind of when you measure up to what movies came out with them and why their box office scores may have been so low. It might also just be, people don't want to go to see movies anymore. People, we want superhero movies. We don't want classic animated kids movies anymore. So it's just a matter of what's hip and what people want to see in theaters. And studios like Laika are kind of in their own thing, and people, it's just kind of like they're in my opinion, they're making what they want to make. They're not making what they think people want to see. And I feel like if everybody could live like that, there'd be a lot of really great movies out there. A lot of the best movies are underrated, and I feel like that's who they are as a company, and I totally vibe with that. And if people don't like their movies, I mean, they're still shoveling them out. Again, they've only made 5 movies, and each one of them has been great. So it's just kind of like they're going to keep trying, and I appreciate that. And if people don't like their movies, it looks like they're still going to keep trying, and that's really great perseverance. And I really like what they're doing, and I hope that they keep it up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I couldn't tell you what a lot of these movies opened against. I know Kubo 2016, it probably opened about a month after like Finding Dory. So, I mean, it's curious. You talk about how maybe people aren't interested in animated movies, and yet Disney and Pixar films, continuously are, making tons of money.
It's all about the names on it.
Yeah.
People know Disney and they know Pixar and they know DreamWorks, but they're not all too familiar with Laika.
Yep. I mean, it's it's tough because like I said, Coraline has the benefit of, you can plaster Henry Selick's name all over it. You can say, you can connect those dots to Nightmare. But by the time we get to Missing Link, we're so far out from that. You can't do that anymore. It's just such a huge dip though between Kubo and Missing Link. 32 million, their biggest dip, and it's just so curious to me. Is it because, like you said, Andrea, is it because stop motion is becoming more of a niche thing? Maybe. But it's got its fans, that's for sure. We wouldn't be recording this right now if we didn't appreciate these films. So if regular animation, if CG, traditional hand-drawn animation isn't your thing, I think give stop motion a chance, because there's some good stuff out there, and not just from Laika. So I do kind of want to talk about how their output compares to these major animation studios, because Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, they're all opening movies all the time, and they're all doing extraordinarily well for the most part. I don't think that, with the possible exception of stuff that Disney has opened during the pandemic, that Disney has had a film miss the 100 million mark at the box office recently. And same with Pixar, except for those recent films that they've tragically dumped exclusively onto Disney Plus. I think we talked about mainstream appeal and how Kubo has that mainstream appeal, and I think that is essentially the difference. Is Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, there is this sort of mainstream appeal about the films that they make that you just don't see with Laika. I don't know. Maybe we just have weird brains that love this kind of stuff. I don't know. Does anyone have any other takes on that? Because I'm at a loss.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think money wise, the major studios are always going to make more because they're able to put more advertising out there and do more to get their brand recognized. Whenever I look at Laika, I also think of like Cartoon Saloon, who does Song of the Sea and The Secret of Kells, and I can't remember the wolf one because I haven't seen it because I don't have Apple TV. But I think of these small studios that make these beautiful films that don't get a lot of love, and I think that's I don't know why it's important to talk about it and to talk about what they can bring to the table, because a lot of people haven't seen these movies, and I think they're worth it.
One factor I did forget to mention is that their movies from Coraline through Kubo all had the backing of Universal or Focus Features. So that helps to have a big studio backing you. Missing Link was distributed by Annapurna Pictures, which they're also a smaller outfit. So they're not going to have the same sort of advertising power that you can get with something like Universal. So that could also have been a major factor into why Missing Link didn't perform as well. It just flew under the radar for a lot of people. I mean, heck, I missed it at the theater, and that's unusual for those kind of films. Oh yeah. Well, let's jump to the next question here. Andrea actually has already answered this question. So Frank, what is your favorite Laika film?
Without rewatching Paranorman recently, I gotta say Coraline. I know I only just watched it 3 hours ago, but honestly, I loved it. I think it was amazing.
I enjoy all these films immensely, but I struggle between Coraline and Kubo. Coraline for its Tim Burton quirkiness and its sort of lightning in a bottle, their first big thing. And then Kubo for that just sweeping epic and their clear mastery of the craft at that point. But I absolutely cannot, I have to acknowledge how much I love Paranorman and the Box Trolls. I mean, Paranorman's a Halloween movie. I'm a Halloween geek. Box Trolls is a British thing, and I love that stuff. It's different. It could change a year from now. Who knows? I may find something in either of those films that I'm going to love even more. But right now, it's really a toss-up between Coraline and Kubo. And Andrea, Showing that love for the box trolls.
To reiterate, yes, box trolls is my favorite. I like movies like that where it's just a cute little dynamic that they have, and I really like movies where Laika does a good job with this too, where they let villains be villains. And Snatcher is just a bad guy who is evil because he doesn't like a certain thing and he wants something, and he doesn't need a tragic backstory to be a bad guy. He's just a bad guy for the sake of being bad. And a lot of people are afraid to do that now. Especially Disney, giving all their villains backstories. I like a villain that doesn't need a tragic backstory, and Snatcher is just a jerk for the sake of being a jerk, and I really like that. And I like that studios aren't afraid to do that now.
But and I think one of the reasons they can get away with that is because Winnie's father isn't necessarily a very good character.
Yeah.
He's not a villain, but he sort of he takes that place of the character who has a good upbringing but is not a good person.
Yeah.
So that one just that's such an interesting dynamic. So not too long ago, Laika announced that they were going to work on a live action film. So, and I haven't heard anything about it since it was originally announced. Is that something that you would find interesting?
I'd want to see the trailer first.
Yeah, to be honest. No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if they're going to just do what everyone else is doing with live action, just use a lot of green screen and stuff like that, it's not going to be really anything that special. But I can't really gauge it until I know what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. Very, very curious, and heard nothing about it since. All I know is the title is supposed to be called 17. So maybe it's another coming of age story. But they also have another animated film in the works, and it's sounding like a return to form, as their next movie is based on a series of children's books. It's called Wildwood, and according to the IMDb summary, it is the adventures of Prue McKeel as she sets off to the forests outside Portlandia to find her kidnapped brother. So once again, we are telling a story set in the Pacific Northwest, and we are telling a story about kids. So it sounds like a return to form for the sort of Coraline Paranorman box trolls type of story. But I'm not familiar with the Wildwood series, so I'm not entirely sure what to expect. I've heard we're going to have some elements of fantasy, which I appreciate. That'll be fun. If we're talking like classic fantasy, woodland creature kind of stuff, then yeah, I think it's right up their alley. So, who's excited for more Laika? All right, I think we're ready for this, and according to every source I've seen, it is set to come out in 2023. Goodness knows if that's going to be the case, given that we're still in a pandemic, and doing that kind of work in the studio with so many people close together, I can't imagine how the pandemic would affect, particularly doing stop motion stuff, where you have to do a lot of that hands-on stuff in the same room with a lot of people. I mean, I love what they've done. I think it's since Paranorman, how either somewhere in the middle of the credits or at the end of the credits, they'll show the animators actually working on a specific scene, and just do a time lapse sequence of that, and it's just so cool to see how they work on that kind of stuff. And I can't imagine doing that during a pandemic. It's crazy. But fingers crossed, 2023, we're going to see some Wildwood. All right, it's time to start wrapping things up here. Andrea, what are your final thoughts here on Laika Studios?
I think that they are a great storytelling aspect, everything about their movies is great. I hope they don't change anything. I don't know how I feel about that live action one, but they're I said this at the beginning, but they care so much about what they put out. The detail put into every film, they want to make a good movie, and they do. And whether people like it or not, it's a good movie. Like, you can't say, well, that was a bad movie. It wasn't. I'm sorry. Like, you're wrong. But just like because they put so much passion and care into their films, I think is what makes it so good. Like, they want it to be good. And I also said this earlier, is that they want to make the movies they want to make. They don't really care about what other people want to see. They're making what they want to make. I mean, it happens to be that people do want to see those movies, which is great, but they're like, we're going to make a movie about a kid who loses his parents but finds his parents again and plays a guitar with two strings on it. Like, in theory, that it's like, okay, so what? But seeing the movie, it's like, yeah, that makes a great film, a great concept for a movie, and it ended up being spectacularly beautiful. So it's also a nice alternative to Disney, that they're doing things that Disney just won't do or doesn't want to do, especially with their villains. And I have to read the villains thing. Anyway, I'm so mad they gave Cruella a backstory. I'm not about that. Anyway, it's nice to see a movie studio making movies for kids that actually care about what kids see and what they learn about from the movies.
Frank, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're an amazing studio, being in an art firm that some people may consider dated, but I think they're proving that it's not, as long as you have excellent artists at the helm making important, relevant stories. And yeah, I wish them the best in every future film that they make. Everything that they put out is honestly really rich. It's very good stuff.
Thank you both for that. I'm glad I have friends with quirky minds who enjoy this kind of stuff, because every year one of these films is released, with the exception of Missing Link, because again, it's a film that I unfortunately passed over when it originally released. Award season comes along, and I always, and as much as I appreciate some of the great stuff that Disney, DreamWorks, etc. does, every time that a Laika film loses the Academy Award for Best Picture, particularly when it's like an off year for like Pixar, when they do like a Monsters University or something like that, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, come on, come on. Just I specifically recall making a very furious Facebook post when Paranorman didn't win. I was really angry about that one. I can't remember what it was up against, but I was just, I don't even think it got nominated. I think it was because it wasn't get nominated, was for animated picture or something like that. I was livid. Because these are great films, and I do think that there could be a much bigger audience for them, if you're willing to just try something new with your animation, try something different. Because, as much as we say Missing Link is the okay film, 5 for 5, again, you're doing well. You can count all those hits on one hand. So there you go. Oh, great. It is time for trivia. So right now, Andrea has 1 point. Frank has 0. Frank, this is your shot to get on the board.
All right. I'll be sure to squander it.
So this is, of course, a Laika-related question. So Laika Studios has engaged in contract work for other studios in film and television. So which of the following did Laika contribute to? Is it A, A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas, B, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas, the season 2 episode of Community, C, The Grand Budapest Hotel, or D, The Isle of Dogs? Frank, I want to go to you first.
I'm going to say A Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas.
All right. Andrea?
I've never watched Community, so it's probably B because I don't know what it is.
Well, congratulations, Frank. You're on the board.
Yeah.
That was my second choice.
So, yeah, there's actually in the season 2 Christmas episode of Community is entirely stop motion animated.
Oh, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have said that one.
It is a brilliant episode of television. And surprisingly, there are some puppetry moments in Grand Budapest Hotel. And then, of course, obviously, Isle of Dogs is Isle of Dogs. But in this case, it's the one I actually haven't seen, and that's a very Harold and Kumar Christmas, because that movie's not really up my alley. Yeah, congratulations on making some money off of Very Harold and Kumar Christmas, a film that very likely made more money than any of their actual original films, which is unfortunate. So, Frank, welcome to the board.
It's good to be here.
There's still plenty of time to catch up to Jalen and to Travis. They're only at 4. So that is our show for this week. Next time, I'm hoping now that the Batman is out, to catch that and do a spoiler cast for that. I've been hearing some very interesting things about it. I'm also very nervous to go see it in a packed theater because, yeah. But before we wrap everything up, something I've wanted to do for a while that I keep forgetting is asking, does anyone here have anything they want to plug? We're all artists here. We've all got, projects that we are working on every now and then. Is there anything you want to give a shout out to while you're here?
I have positively nothing going on right now. No, I'm sorry. I'm just doing my job. And that's it.
That's okay. Sometimes that just happens.
My play is not coming out for a while, so.
But hey, you've got a project. That's something to say. All right. So this has been Laika Studios. Andrea, Frank, thank you very much for joining me for this chat. It has been an absolute pleasure. Everyone out there, if you are now suddenly very interested in these movies, 2 of them are available on streaming services, and if you think they're good, just go out and give them a buy, or give me a call. I've got 4 of them. I'm very willing to lend them out. So thanks to everyone for watching, and have a good day.